So here's the question for today. Do you have a car lease ending soon? Are you wondering what options you have and how to get the best deal? This was a question we received from one of our loyal listeners, so stay tuned to the show to find out.
Welcome to the Ask Ralph podcast. We're listening to an experienced financial professional with over 30 years of experience can help you make sense of confusing questions, current headlines, and industry trends about taxes, small business, financial decision-making, investment strategies, and even the art of proper budgeting. Ask Ralph makes the complex simple by sharing his real-world knowledge from a Christian perspective with all things financial. Now here's your host, Ralph Estep Jr.
Welcome back to another episode of this show. So we're all about mastering your finances from a Christian perspective. As always, it's great to have you tuning in today. Now, yesterday we had a really important discussion about how to gently encourage adult children to leave the nest and gain their own independence. If you missed that episode, be sure to go back and listen. You can find all of our past episodes right at our website, and that's at askralphpodcast.com. And remember this. Financial freedom starts with taking responsibility for our own lives. So we need to teach our young adult children that as well. Now, today we're talking about something else that affects a lot of families, and that's options when your car lease ends. A lot of people decide to lease cars, and you really need to understand what happens at the end of that lease. So the question is, what should you do when the lease is up? You have some options. I don't intend to cover them all today, but I have really three that I think are the main ones. And that is you can buy it, you can turn it in, or get another lease. And I'm going to walk you through the pros and cons so you can make the best choice. Now, tomorrow we're going to be talking about retirement from a faith perspective and how many people have fear of that. So we're going to talk about how we can overcome the fear of letting go of that steady paycheck and trusting God to provide. That's not easy for people. So I'm looking forward to tackling that topic, so be sure to subscribe to this show and don't miss tomorrow's show. Well, I'd like to ground our financial discussions in some biblical wisdom. We're going to talk about Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. It says this, "A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps." Are you allowing the Lord to direct your steps? Well, that's what I'm going to encourage you to do today. As we look at what to do when your lease ends, make plans and do research. But you've got to ultimately trust that God will guide you to the right decision. Seek Him first, and He will lead you on the right path. So, all right, you've made it to the end of your auto lease. And like I said, you really have three main options in my opinion. And that's number one, turn in the leased car. You basically take it back to the auto dealer or whatever the name brand that you bought, make arrangements to turn it back in. The next thing you can do is you've already got the car, you can actually purchase it or buy out the lease. And the third thing you can do is lease another car. And there are other options, but I wanted to cover those three today. So let's look at the pros and cons of each of those choices. Let's start with the first one. If you decide to turn in your leased car, well, here's the benefit to that. You're done with car payments and your responsibility ends. It's the opportunity to get a new car. Maybe you got something cool in mind, or you want a new color or a different brand altogether. The cons to that is there could be a disposition fee for turning it in. That's what we're going to talk about. When you got that lease, what was that mileage that you allowed for? The whole lease is based on whether you're under or over those mileage. So if you've gone over those miles, there's going to be a fee that you're going to have to take and pay if you want to just turn it in. The other con to doing this is you start over with a brand new car with zero equity. But again, you walk away from it, pay the disposition fee if there is any, and then go find something new. Now, option number two we're going to talk about is buying out your leased car. Now, the pros to this is there's no need to shop for a different car. It's already yours. You've already been leasing it or renting it, whatever you want to call it. You've built up equity if you're under your mileage, which basically lowers that purchase price, and you skip that disposition fee altogether. So if you're over mileage, this may be the best option, so you're not writing a check. Now, there are some cons to that, though. Now you're going to still have a car payment. Maybe you did a 2 or 3 year lease. You've been paying on that car for 3 years, and now you've got that residual. You're going to pay it off, but you're going to have to get a loan for that. So you're going to have another time for car payments. Maybe that's 24, 48, or even 60 months. The other con to this is there's limited negotiation on the purchase price. They've got that residual value and any disposition fees, and that's what you're going to pay. Now, the third option is leasing another car. This is kind of a cool option because you always have a new car. Maybe there'll be lower monthly payments than buying a car because you could always make a decision. Look, I'm not going to lease it all this time, Ralph. I'm going to go right into purchasing it. Now, the cons to do that is you never really build up equity. You're basically renting a vehicle. And whenever that lease is up, you rent a new one. Now, a lot of people love that because they've got that new car every 2 years, maybe every 3 years. And then the other thing you got to be worried about is those turn-in costs at the end of every lease. If you've gone over mileage or if there's, unusual wear and tear. So you might ask, Ralph, which option is best? I don't know that I have a great answer, but here are my tips for that. If your goal is to stop having a monthly car payment, then go ahead and purchase your lease car. Just be sure to negotiate a fair price based on the car's residual value and the mileage. Buying allows you to capitalize on it and build up equity. And the truth is, we could have started this discussion with, should you have leased in the first place? If you're somebody that keeps a car forever, you keep that car 10, 12, 15 years, probably not a wise choice to lease at the front end. I did talk about this on the show a few weeks ago, so you might want to go back and listen to that. But if you're somebody who really wants to get a new car, you're going to have about the same mileage every year, then maybe a lease is a good option for you. Now, if you always want a new car with lower payments, leasing may be the way to go in this situation. Just be prepared to keep starting over with no equity each time and factor in those unusual wear and tear and over mileage disposition fees. Now, if you're open to something different, you could turn in your lease car and shop for the best deal on a new purchase. Just know you'll have to go through the buying process again. Now, for most people, I recommend buying your lease car if you can get a good price. That allows you to keep and benefit from the equity you build up. And the truth is, what maintenance was done. About new tires. About any wear and tear on that car. You've been driving it for the time of the lease, so you really know about that car. So here are some specific action steps. And these are very important. You've got to research the residual value and payoff amount in your lease paperwork. Go back and pull that paperwork. At the time you signed for that lease, they proposed what the residual value was going to be. And that's what the whole lease was based on. It basically is no more complicated than, hey, here's the purchase price, here's the residual value. The difference between those two things, plus some interest, was your monthly lease payment. But you need to know what that is, because then you've got to go and look at the market and say, okay, the residual issue is a simple example. Let's say you leased a Toyota, right? And you did a 2-year lease. And when you did this 2-year lease, you agreed that the residual value would be $25,000 at the end of the lease. So you pulled your paperwork, you see it's $25,000, you go to the dealer and they tell you, oh, you know what? That car is worth $20,000. Well, you're not going to want to buy that out because look, you can go buy a new car for less price. But let's use a different example. Let's say you go back to that dealer, your residual is 25, and they say, hey, you know what? The fair market value of that car is $30,000 now. Well, that might be a great time to buy because you've got that $5,000 built in. But that's another part of doing your research and understanding what's going on in the market. You also want to have your car inspected and determine its market value. Make sure they're not going to ding you for any over mileage or any unusual wear and tear. And then you negotiate the purchase price based on the market value, not that predetermined residual value. And of course, you've got to get pre-approved financing if it's needed. So following these steps allows you to maximize the equity in your leased vehicle. You gain an asset instead of starting over again. Remember, praying about big purchases like this is so important. I can't stress this enough. Ask God to guide you to the right decision for your particular situation. He knows what vehicle and financial path will bless you the most. All right, let's do a quick recap of what we covered today. At the end of your auto lease, you can turn in the car, you can purchase it, or you can lease another car. Purchasing your lease car allows you to gain an asset by using the equity you build up. And again, remember, do your research and understand what the value is versus the residual value. Negotiate the buyout price based on the car's market value. That's what we're just talking about, not some predetermined residual. If lower payments are your goal, leasing may be the best option. And no matter what, in all things financial and all things like, pray about the decision and trust God to direct your steps. Well, that's all we have time for this episode. I hope you now feel equipped to make the best decision when your auto lease ends. As always, be sure to visit AskRalphPodcast.com to access all of our resources and join our email list. I'm going to ask you for a big favor. Share this episode with a friend or family member who might need advice on their expiring car lease. Maybe they're even considering doing a lease, and you might want to share this with them so they can understand what happens at the end of that lease. And please come back tomorrow as we talk about retirement from a faith perspective. And as I always say, my friends, stay financially savvy, and God bless you today.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph podcast. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.